You know, it's interesting that if we look at who has a union in the creative space, let's look. The musician has a union, the AF of M. The singers have their own union under the SAG-AFTRA. Actors also have their own union. Directors have their own union. Producers have their own union. Screenplay writers have their own union. We all know how much film and TV incorporates music. There is no film and TV without music. In fact, even the stagehands, IATSE, have a union. So, what is the legal interpretation of why songwriters don't have their own union?
All right, ladies and gents, gather round, gather round. We got value going once, truth going twice. Sold for a song. That's right, folks. Rights signed away, data given away, pennies on the play. Publishing, gone. Credit, missing. Ownership, kiss it goodbye. 50 pages of catch-22s, no dice. You can't eat a like, a follow, or a view. Sold for a song. But wait now, hold your bits, hold your breath. Here comes the truth louder than the bass lines. Time to take it back. Where the artists rise, the system shakes, and the silence finally breaks.
Welcome to Sold for a Song, the transformative podcast that dissects the music industry's long-standing practice of undervaluing its most essential contributors. Yes, we're talking songwriters and artists. In each episode, we'll delve into the journey of recognizing and elevating the true worth and value of music creators, discover how the industry has exploited creators, and learn actionable strategies to revolutionize this trend and take control of your career. Hello, podcast land. I'm Terrance Sawchuk, but you can call me Terry. After 30 plus years in the trenches of the music industry, trust me, I've seen it all. The highs, the heartbreaks, and the resilience it takes to succeed as a creator. Here's what I've learned. Awakening your self-worth, owning and leveraging your value, and streamlining the process to free up the time we need to do what we most love to do, which is create. That's what stands between you and the freedom we're all chasing. All right, before we dive in, if you believe in empowering artists and redefining what it means to thrive creatively, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a quick review, and share this episode with someone who truly needs it. That one click helps more than you know. And if you want to go deeper, join me at terrancesawchuk.com to be a part of the community and follow all of my endeavors for exclusive content and updates. Hello, podcast land. Welcome to another episode of Sold for a Song. And today we are talking about why songwriters don't have a union. I was surprised to find out that a lot of my songwriting cohorts were not aware that organizing a union for songwriters is not frowned upon. It's illegal. So I want to explain why it is illegal and a few other things around the topic of songwriters representing themselves. So what is a song exactly? A song is something that is owned entirely by the creator. There is no such thing as the publisher's share. There's no such thing as publishing. What you have is a song created by one or more individuals. A song is composed, and then it's put on some kind of sound carrier. There is no publisher involvement at this point. There is no publishing share of the song. I just want that to be clear. So what is the publishing share? You then have this written language called the publishing share. This is a share where if you, as the inventor and 100% owner of this invention, want to have a reciprocal relationship with an investor or some other second party, publisher, etc., where you can enter into a contract where it is maybe an administration deal where they just collect your royalties, or a full co-publishing deal where they will give you an advance on royalties. It's not an income, it's an advance on royalties, which is kind of like living on a credit card. So you owe it all back with a very specific way that they allow you to pay them back. Often, it's not with the largest part of your royalties. Example would be you have a #1 hit song and you've made, let's say, $1 million. None of those performance royalties can go towards paying off the debt, which is this draw they've been paying you over the contract term. So for 3 or 4 years, they've been paying you, say, $30,000 a year as an advance on royalties. A lot of contracts state the big money from ASCAP and BMI, you can't use that money to pay down the debt, which means we technically don't owe you a draw for the second term of the contract until you recoup. It will say you have to use your mechanical royalties or your streaming royalties to pay down this debt. And then you can allot this share they call the publishing publishing side, which is the other 50% of a song. In most cases, this publishing entity will be interested in the entire share, as well as the ownership of that half, as well as the unconditional right in perpetuity worldwide to administer and own any business that comes to the forefront with that song. Now, you, the songwriter, will be shooting for maybe more of a co-publishing deal, which means the publisher is only getting 50% of the 50%, so 25 cents on the dollar. Like I said before, maybe that's just an administration deal where they're taking, say, 10%. Those rates seem to be going up very high now, too, so it's more like 15 and 20% just to collect your royalties. I also want you to understand that once other countries collect your royalties, there is a added-on administration cost from each country. So an example would be, so if BMI or ASCAP or CSAC is collecting your royalties here in the United States for, let's say, 20%, then they have to go get the royalties from England, and the PRO out there, they already took their percentage off the top and now has sent that to the U.S. Long story short, you could have 65% in administration costs alone just trying to get your paycheck. So tell me that Web3 and blockchain and AI is not going to blow all of that out of the water very soon by removing intermediaries and methods and how money is collected, which is going to be a huge stress on the market share method of collecting money historically. So all you Wall Street investors who did your valuations based on how we collected money in the past are going to see a big change in the future when this is collected very quickly based on a per play method. Those market share style payments will probably go away. We will find out. You, at that point, just become somebody who earns your writer's share. But I don't want it to be confused that the publisher or publishing share plays a role from the beginning. I can show you an example. Before I had a publisher, my PRO SOCAN, when I would register my songs, I didn't have a publishing name at the time. So they just said it was extra books. So here is the 100% owned song by you. We will collect the performance royalties and we will send them to you, your name, Terrance Sawchuk. You are going to get the royalties. There is no publisher, there's no publisher name, there's no publisher entity until I enter into a contract with whatever second entity. I just wanted to get the origin of a song out so that we could move on to a topic like unions. And, you know, it's interesting that if we look at who has a union in the creative space, let's look. The musician has a union, the AFM. The singers have their own union under the SAG-AFTRA. Actors also have their own union. Directors have their own union. Producers have their own union. Screenplay writers have their own union. We all know how much film and TV incorporates music. There is no film and TV without music. In fact, even the stagehands, IATSE, have a union. So what is the legal interpretation of why songwriters don't have their own union? Songwriters do not have a union because U.S. labor laws applies to employees, while songwriters are classified as independent rights holders. And U.S. antitrust law prohibits independent rights holders from collectively bargaining over prices. So owning your songs and controlling them are two very different things. In the United States, songwriters own the copyright to their compositions, yet the most important parts of that ownership, the right to say no and the right to set the prices, are largely removed. To understand this and why, you have to look at the chain of command. So being law, of course, everything starts at the top with Congress, of course. So Congress creates the Copyright Royalty Board. The president appoints the Librarian of Congress, which is confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Together, this manages the Copyright Board and the 3 judges that are appointed to oversee it all. Congress decides what rights creators are granted, and just as importantly, how those rights can be limited. So Congress created the exclusive rights of songwriters, the right to reproduce a song, distribute it, perform it publicly, and license it. And they also created the exceptions. Those exceptions are called compulsory licenses. A compulsory license means that once the song has been released to the public, the songwriter can no longer refuse certain uses of that song and cannot renegotiate the price for those uses. So this is something Prince used to go off about, So he would say, look, it's my song. I created it. I wrote 100% of it. I own it. And I don't want anybody else recording it. If you want to use my work or buy my work, come and buy or download or listen to my creation. And I get it. I understand. And songwriters, you need to know that before the song is released to the public, you still have some rights. So as an example, I've had a few situations where the artist or the investor didn't pay me or pay the session musicians to finish a record, or they wanted to use my song in a certain way, but it hadn't been recorded yet, or it could still be recorded in the studio, but it hadn't been released publicly yet. I yanked all use of the album. Like, the investor literally lost everything because I chose my right to not allow it to enter the market for that first time. So we didn't get paid the rest of our money, and they didn't get an album, and they lost everything as well because they chose not to pay us. And we chose one of the few rights that we do have as songwriters to not grant them that first license to release it publicly. So if you ever run into a catch with anyone, a co-writer, anything, I'm not saying start feuds. I'm saying know your rights. If something is not going right for you, your legal right before that song is released is to stop it from being released. Now, if you're a published songwriter, you are shit out of luck because they have the right to say what happens with the song, and they can go around you, not caring if you got paid or not, and they allow or disallow the artist or that investor, etc., from being able to use the song. Here's another fun story. When I had my country Billboard #1, Barefoot Blue Jean Night, I had the pleasure of writing that with Eric Pasley and Dylan Altman, two incredible talents. I owned my publishing, and I still do. I own my copyright, the third of that song. I own all of my songs, I should say, and my publisher collects the royalties worldwide for me. But what happened when that song hit was I was doing my own administration. I hadn't signed a publishing administration deal yet. So there were a ton of entities on Apple iTunes when they were still downloading, like karaoke albums that were using my song without paying me. Well, they would say, well, we already sent the license or the payment to the publisher. I said, no, you didn't. You sent it to my co-writer's publisher. I didn't receive any of that money. And it's not my job to track it down to find out what happened. It's your job to go through the due diligence to find me and to pay me for the use of that song. So here's the best part. I contacted through iTunes. There must have been about 80 sources around the world using my song that I was not receiving a check for. My co-writer's publisher might have been getting all of the money, some of it, or none of it as well. I don't know. There are tons of Chinese companies that are making a fortune using your music all over the world and not paying a dime for it. All I knew is I wasn't getting paid. I could prove that I wasn't getting paid. So I knew enough about my rights, and I knew enough the fact that these entities probably don't even know what they're doing. Half of them are just crooks. So I had like 80 uses of Barefoot Blue Jean Night pulled off of Apple iTunes in like 2 weeks. Well, I had people coming out of the woodworks, and I said, hey, send me a check and all is good. Here's the best part. Because of the compulsory license, the song's already released. I can't stop these people from using it. I can't stop them from not paying me. But I knew enough to at least call their bluff and say, I bet you they don't know that. And they're just going to leave it offline when I basically, do my flex. And that's exactly what happened. So if you look online and see the karaoke versions of Barefoot Blue Jean Night, I can guarantee you this much. There might be fewer than there usually would be for especially a popular song, but they are all paying for it. That I can assure you. It's a tangled web, the Copyright Act, the fact that there's a copyright board that oversees this in itself is a little mind-boggling. I mean, what entity has their livelihood created by Congress? So, I mean, minimum wage or court reporters, I'm sure you can come up with a list, but none of them are the rest of the music industry and the corporate structure and the users of music. None of them are under these laws. Only the songwriter is. So I don't want our listeners to be confused to think that the actual songwriter has their own representation. There are publishers, which are on the other half of the song, controlling their own interests, which indirectly are supposed to control our interests, but that's not always the case. The PROs are granted the ability to collect performance royalties. The NSAI, the Nashville International Songwriting Association, does probably a better job than most at representing the actual songwriter, but they legally don't have any jurisdiction to change anything other than through lobbying and talking to representatives. So when does this become very challenging for the songwriter? Well, as an example, let's say you're supposed to get paid for live concert performance royalties. This is one of the worst managed parts of the music industry, one of the least transparent in the United States. I mean, if you perform a song at a concert in the United States, there's an excellent chance the songwriters are not going to get paid. I'm not going to mention names on the show. I have more than enough evidence from the horse's mouths on generational artists that have toured for decades, and songwriters were never paid for live performance. Now, how do songwriters get paid for live performance? The chain of command looks like this: the artist and representation. So your road manager or your manager will take the set list. They could upload that set list directly to the PRO's websites. They do have infrastructure set up for that. There are software solutions for the live touring world that allow you to input which songs were used in that show into the software. The set list will then be sent to the promoter, in most cases Live Nation. Live Nation takes that list, puts it up against the gross earnings for that show. There is a percentage of that goes to the songwriters and publishers from the gross of that show, and then that information gets sent to the PROs, your ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, and then they distribute the money from that concert to the songwriters and publishers. I can tell you, I can prove to you, with over a decade of paperwork, that that is not the case. This area alone is one of the most mismanaged and least transparent parts of the royalty collection world. So that's just one area where songwriters would love to be able to have more say. I mean, this is supposed to be a free market with reciprocal relationships, which everybody else has in the music royalty performance and recording world, except for the actual inventor. I call songwriters the inventor because they can just write a song and record it on their hard drive or just play it at a pub. It's their song. They invented it. They owned it. Now you've got musicians that play on it and interpret a unique new version of it at a studio with arrangers and musicians and recording engineers. But it's important to note that the invention, the actual creation, is set by the songwriter, the inventor of said copyright. It's only after that that it becomes another entity, both creatively as well as business. It becomes a product held together by contracts with hopefully reciprocal agreements. So if you follow copyright law and songwriters' rights and publishers' rights, you're hearing a lot of talk about the Music Modernization Act and different initiatives. We're always fighting to control our rights and rates because at the core of it, how everything is set up where the inventor is not in charge of their art. This is why you have this kind of peripheral shit show anytime you try to manage the music business around songwriting. Now we have, as of this week, we have the richest person in history, and Elon Musk, on paper, probably a trillionaire now, is complaining because he feels that publishers are colluding to set pricing. And, it's inconvenient for him that it is too expensive for X to use the music. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Do you know what happens when you don't get your way in life, just don't use music. Use a foghorn on X. Use a different art form. If you're not happy with how something's being managed, it's a free country. Nobody is saying that X has to use music on their platform, but Elon Musk understands the power of music and leveraging it, over-leveraging it rather. And so it's an inconvenience for the bottom line of X. But we as the songwriter have very few rights when it comes to negotiating or having any say in what it is that he's doing now, suing publishers, which are watching out for the publisher's share. Let's be straight. I mean, they want the song and the songwriter to be healthy and to earn a lot of money. They want the song to be a protected entity, of course, but there is no buffer between the songwriter and their rights and the publisher and their interest. It's important to divide those two because there are many ways to look at the royalty world when you are the publishing side or the songwriting side. And they both require equally as much representation. In this case, the songwriter's hands are a little tied, very tied. So I just want to explain today the fact that why there isn't a union for songwriters. The fact that the main reason is it's illegal. So that's why it doesn't exist. It will not exist until Congress passes a different law. It would have to look something like we now have a Copyright Act, but we don't actually represent the people and the representatives that are involved in this. And then they would have to allow us to represent ourselves in the same manner Spotify represents themselves. But this comes down to basic US law. Maybe it's a convenience for music users, how it all came together. But that's the way it is. Now, this is why I keep promoting that the songwriter and artist need to kind of drive a stake between them and the users to be able to leverage their music as opposed to be leveraged by the user. What does that look like? Instead of going to Spotify to listen to your music, or instead of trying to have a lived experience with your favorite artist on TikTok, no, you go to this portal, an app, this experience center, this home base that is owned, leveraged, streamlined, and sustained by the actual artist. So fans out there, when you see or hear, catch wind in any form, any format of a song you like or an artist you like, your immediate instinct should be, how do I shut this app off and go directly to their website where this artist can give me an amazing experience and I can give them my money directly. I truly believe the creators of the future, this goes for musicians, this goes for producers. I mean, if you're teaching lessons online on somebody else's software platform because they just built a platform for guitar players to teach guitar or songwriters to teach songwriting, why the hell are you on there? I literally just built an app before this podcast. What was the software I was using? Let me check it out. Yeah, it's called Base 44. I'm not saying it's the answer to everything, but we are literally days, weeks, months, maybe a few years. You're just going to be speaking your own software solution into your phone. You'll have your own app, your own home base, where TikTok, Spotify, these are just going to be business cards. They're just going to be like a billboard you see on the highway. If the songwriter, in a lot of cases the artist, doesn't have proper representation, then the best way to leverage your creations and your career is to have everyone come to you, where you own and leverage everything. Okay, so now things are going so good for you that an independent or a major label has come knocking. Okay, great. Well, excellent problems to have. The difference now is you are educated. You have clarity. You've been running this little business on this little private portal. Okay, well, now when you go to sit down with a publisher or an independent label or a major label, you're in a completely different situation. In fact, if you're earning the lion's share and you own and control everything, I mean, you have to start really thinking, do you even want to sign with a label? Anyway, in a world where you, the songwriter, is legally not allowed to be part of a collective that could adjust the pricing for the industry. So in the meantime, until Congress comes up with brilliant actual ideas like term limits and possibly allowing songwriters to enter the free market in the land of the free in the capitalist free market society. Until then, own and leverage everything from your own home base. And fans, if you're listening out there, the second you catch wind of a song or an artist you like, don't go to Spotify and don't go to TikTok. Go looking for this home base. Artists, make sure that your SEOs are up so they can find you, and make sure that your website and this portal is exciting enough for them to not want to leave and build a relationship with you. If today's episode lit a fire in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to Sold for a Song, leave a review, and be the spark that helps others discover their own worth. And if you're ready to go deeper, visit terrancesawchuk.com. Let's build this movement together.